Hello, welcome to She Breathes Easy. My name is Marissa. Welcome back if you're returning. Thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new here, my name is Marissa. I am a 345-hour yoga teacher. I have training in Vinyasa yoga and creative sequencing and the quiet practices. And I have also been on a body recomp journey. So if you're not familiar with body recomposition, it's essentially the process of losing fat and gaining muscle. So today I'm going to be talking about something I never really shared on the internet in its entirety, which is my journey of losing 20 pounds over the last year, and gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time. So this is something that I think I've always wanted, but first off, never admitted, even though I've tried a lot of different things, that we'll get into today. And I honestly really want to share this with you to hopefully give you some kind of hope wherever you are in your journey, especially with your body image, with how you feel in your body right now, and know that there are so many ways and so many tools to get you to where you want to be. So let's dive in. So I actually wanted to start kind of where it all started for me, which, to preface this, I am 28 years old, I am 5'3", and I really started, I think, my weight loss journey when I was like 13 or 14 years old, which I know is really young, but I grew up pretty chubby. I wouldn't say that I was ever overweight, but I think I always felt like I was a little bigger than all of my friends. I also had an older sister that was just naturally thin, and I just always fell into comparison mode. So when I was around 13 or 14, I started doing Pilates YouTube. If you know, Cassie Ho from Blogilates, she's my OG. That was kind of my first introduction to working out at home. I would do Blogilates videos with my friend in her basement, in her parents' home gym. And I would go on runs a lot too. So I started running around my neighborhood, which had a lot of hills. And I also was tracking my food, which is just so wild to say that I was a young girl. Tracking my food in MyFitnessPal, which back then, there weren't phones or apps or anything. I would log it into my desktop at home, and I would write down my food in a journal every day. And it was really the beginning of disordered eating, I think. At that young age, I was very much labeling good food and bad food. And I will say that that was my first noticeable weight change, where my friends' parents started to notice that I was losing weight. Going on the runs and stuff like that, I guess was working, but yeah. From there, I wanted to shift into early college age. So I was 18 to 20. That was when I first started lifting weights, actually. That was when Instagram was also kind of coming out, and I followed a lot of fitness accounts, and it was a lot of almost bodybuilder women that were lifting weights in the gym and posting their workouts, and I was really inspired by that. So I started to go to the gym. I actually had a college roommate that was very into lifting, and he showed me how to do a proper warm-up, what form looked like and stuff like that. So I'm grateful that I had someone to kind of guide me through that, because it was very intimidating as a young woman. And don't get me wrong, I didn't just lift weights. I was on the elliptical for probably 30 to 45 minutes minimum. I had a very active job. I was actually working at Chipotle, which it was a very busy Chipotle. It was right off campus. So I worked there all throughout college, and I actually worked in the prep kitchen to begin. So I would help with deliveries. I'd be running around the kitchen, lifting up heavy pots of rice and stuff. And that was also, I think, when I started to lose weight again. I was also vegan at the time. So that was, I think, a very restrictive, healthy way of eating, where I did have a vegan protein powder that I used at the time, but I was mostly bringing food, and it was carrots and hummus and very vegetable oriented, which I'm sure I got my nutrients and my minerals in, but I was very, very restrictive. And I think I used the vegan label as a way to not eat foods. So that was probably the lowest my weight was at the time. I weighed 123 pounds at my lowest, and I remember my goal weight was always 120, and I never got there until recently. Okay, and then we'll shift into when I was post-college. After I traveled and stuff after college, COVID hit. So that was around the time I was 23 to 25. COVID was a hard time for me. I was quarantined, obviously, as all of us were, in the middle of a very stressful time globally. So I was doing yoga constantly. And like, when I say constant yoga, like not just like 1 or 2 hours a day, like I'd probably spend half my day on my mat. Doing really challenging practices. I was working on my inversion practice at the time. I was walking constantly, just going out for walks for like mental health. And this was kind of when I started leaning back into disordered eating. So I was pretty restrictive. I was also very much in my addiction at that point. So if you don't know, I'm currently sober, but the pandemic was kind of where my addiction was at its worst. I was smoking a lot, smoking weed. I was drinking constantly, and that kind of tied into like not eating all day and then eating at night and binging. And this was also when I slowly started to add meat back into my diet. So I was actually gluten-free for a little bit as well, vegan, gluten-free for a little bit, and then slowly over time, I started to introduce meat back into my diet. I introduced eggs and cheese and didn't really have restrictions around food. And when I got sober, actually, was when I started to eat more whole foods oriented and really focus on the ingredients, because I learned that when I was vegan, I was actually having a lot of like fake meat and a lot of processed food. Once I got sober, and we'll kind of shift into getting closer to now, but the next phase really was after I got married to my husband. So now we're shifting into like, I was 26 to 27. My first couple of years of being married, I was still doing yoga pretty constantly, like active practices. I was lifting weights pretty consistently, but not really following any plans. It was more random strength classes or workouts, group classes and stuff like that. And I also got into cycling. So I was cycling a lot, like probably a few times a week. And I was mainly just going to group classes. I didn't really have a schedule or anything or a plan that I followed. And I was focusing on eating whole foods and not restricting at all. However, this is also when I started to work from home. So I had a remote job. I wasn't moving as much. And this was actually the time period where I started to get to my heaviest weight. So I think the heaviest that I weighed at that time was 137, and kind of the heaviest I've ever been. So close to 140 pounds. Again, I'm 5'3". And I say all these numbers just to give you like a gauge of where I was at, but not to compare yourself, please. Don't compare yourself to me, because we are all different people and have different bodies and different anatomy. But I will say that this time was kind of where I started to feel the lowest about my body. I was really in a place where I felt like I was working really hard and taking really good care of myself, but when I looked in the mirror, I just wasn't happy. And when I saw pictures of myself and videos of myself, because I'm a yoga teacher and I would do all that stuff, I was really unhappy with how I looked. So fast forward to now, or I guess the last year or so. So now I'm 28. And this year was kind of where everything changed for me. When I realized how much I weighed and knew I wanted to make a change, I found my current fitness and nutrition coach. And she basically taught me everything I know and how I achieved my body recomposition. So I started to lift weights consistently and mainly focus on strength training. I started to follow a plan as well, which I've never done before. And I think this was almost like the secret for me, is not doing random workouts, but doing consistent workouts and keeping track of my weights, properly progressive overloading, which is essentially like constantly challenging your muscles instead of like always picking up the same dumbbells every week. I also really focused on increasing my step count. So because I work from home and I was at a desk most of the day, I really wasn't getting any like activity. And I am a very naturally active person. I like to walk. I like to walk around and stuff. Like most of my job experience has been in restaurants, which is a very fast-paced and active environment. So intentionally increasing my movement throughout the day really helped me. Now I just take like every hour or so, I just get up and walk around the house, or I take a 5-10 minute walk, and that has significantly helped my body composition and losing fat. And then last thing I did was tracking macros, which I know can sound really scary for some people, especially for me. It sounded scary because my only experience with tracking food was when I was really young and labeling food as good or bad. And I think how tracking macros and tracking my food in general really helped me is I learned what food consists of. So instead of like saying that I can't have cookies because they're bad, I can have one cookie and know like, okay, that has like this impact on my macros or my calories for the day. And also learning that I've learned so much in this phase, to be honest, but even learning the little things of like, if I do want a cookie that's mostly carbs, let me have a glass of milk with it because that's a little bit of protein and that'll help me feel more full rather than grabbing for like a few more cookies because I'm still hungry from the blood sugar spike. So there are so many things that I've learned. I feel like I could get into all these rabbit holes, but what I essentially wanted to portray in this journey is that there's so many phases of our life, and at least for me, I think the overarching goal has always been to feel my best, to look my best, to honestly work hard so that I can look toned and muscular and hot. And we're taught and fed so much information, but we're not really guided in a supported way. And I think that's where one-on-one coaching and like working with a professional can really, really help you. So if you are looking to lose weight or gain muscle, lose fat at the same time, like how I did, I would love to work with you. So my private one-on-one sessions, it's yoga every week, a custom-made yoga flow to exactly what your body needs and what you are craving that week on top of like your general goals. But I also offer a body recomp add-on. So it's essentially my professional guidance with your nutrition, with your workouts, and we really dive into like the mindset shifts you need to have when it comes to losing weight, when it comes to losing fat. There is so much involved in this journey, and I would love to support you to get to where you want to be as well. So if you're interested, I do have my 30-minute intention call. I'll put the link in the description below. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed learning about my journey, learning about more like my background and where I'm coming from. I will say that I forgot to mention this, but in this past year, I've lost 20 pounds. I started at 137 and I actually got down to 116, which is the lowest weight I've ever been. Right now I'm maintaining around like 118 to 120, and I just love where I'm at. I love my body. I love how strong I'm getting, and I really never thought that I would get to this place where I don't have a bad relationship with food. I love working out. I look forward to my workouts rather than dreading them or feeling incredibly sore constantly. And I just love like how my life is and how it's just all implemented into my life rather than feeling like one more thing to focus on. So if this is something that excites you, book a call with me. I would love to hear about your journey and how I can support you in that. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Like this video if you liked content like this and you want to like hear more about my own journey when it comes to my body recomposition and my weight loss. I honestly like never thought that I would get to this point, and it's really crazy to me that I'm not only at this point right now, but I can also help other women do the same. Thank you so much for being here, for listening all the way through. Can't wait to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.